Have you ever wondered what happens in that very second when the heart stops, when the body is still here but you are no longer? When you exhale for the last time and everything around suddenly becomes quieter than ever before? Edgar Cayce, the man who saw death from the inside, said, "Death is not the end, it is a transition. And the first 7 days after it are the most important trial for the soul. In these moments, a person realizes everything they believed in or laughed at is real. Light, darkness, voices, a call. You see yourself lying motionless. You see your loved ones crying. You try to tell them, "I'm here." But no one hears. You pass through walls. You smell the coffee, hear conversations, but you cannot touch. And inside, growing despair. The world does not see you. Cayce, in his readings, said that for the first 3 days, the soul remains near the body. It does not believe it has died. It still feels warmth, smell, pain. It tries to hug, to knock on the window, whispers names. During these hours, strange things happen to the living. Sudden cold, ringing in the ears, a falling object. It is not mysticism, it is a call. The soul seeks confirmation that it is seen. Once a woman from Virginia told a story. On the night after her husband's death, their bedroom smelled of his cologne, and on the pillow there was a dent, as if he had sat beside her. She was not afraid. She simply said, "I know you're here," and the scent vanished. But with it, her pain was gone. On the 4th day, Cayce said, "The soul sees the light, not the tunnel light the survivors speak about. Another one, soft, calling, but deceptive. Not every light is from God. Many follow it too soon and get stuck between worlds. They think they have found peace, but it is an illusion, a world created by their own fear. And others wait. They listen to the inner voice. And if they have enough courage, they hear the true call. Then opens what Cayce called the Great Transition. Everything that was hidden becomes visible. The soul sees not only its past, but also how every word, every pain, every little thing affected others. It is not judgment, it is truth, without a whip, without mercy. One man who experienced clinical death said, "I did not see God. I saw every moment of my life, and I understood heaven and hell are within us. For this the soul has 3 days. From the 4th to the 6th day, time there flows differently. A minute can last an eternity, and it is there that the decision is made, where to go next. If a person lived with love, if they forgave, the path is open. If not, the soul remains here until it learns to let go." The 7th day is special, a day of meeting. The soul sees the guides, beings of light or shadow. They do not judge. They wait for the choice. Some leave easily, like morning mist. Others return to their homes, to photographs, to voices. Sometimes on that day miracles happen, and sometimes strange fears. Because the door between worlds is still open, and perhaps that is why during these 7 days we most often feel the presence of those we loved. Not with eyes, not with ears, but with skin. You feel it, don't you? The goosebumps on your skin are not from the cold, but this is only the beginning. The 7th day is not the end, but a door. Beyond it lies what the living mind is not capable of understanding. When the soul takes a step, everything disappears. Pain, fear, heaviness. But memory remains. Of every glance, every word, every choice. You stand as if before a mirror that shows all your lives at once. You see yourself in other eras. A child, an old man, a woman, a warrior. You understand. You were both the one who suffered and the one who caused pain. All roles are one story. In his readings, Cayce described how the soul in these moments remembers everything, and then realization comes to it. Life is not sequential. It is circular. It returns until you learn the main lesson, love. After the 7th day, the soul enters the space that Cayce called the plane of light. It is not heaven. It is a mirror where every thought becomes form. If there is fear within you, it comes alive. If there is love, it shines. There it is impossible to pretend, because there, everything you truly were becomes visible. In one of his sessions, Cayce saw a person standing before his reflection, but the reflection was not a body. It was a vortex of light in which all his actions pulsed. He reached out his hand and felt the heat of his own lies. Then, the coolness of kind words. Thus, the soul recognizes itself. It is here that it meets its higher self, not God, itself. That part which has known everything since the beginning of time. It does not accuse. It shows the meaning of every pain. You see why you suffered, why you lost, whom you met, and for the first time you feel not guilt but understanding. But not everyone can endure. Sometimes the soul turns away, afraid to look truth in the eyes. Then it is pulled downward, to where those who have not forgiven live. They create their own prisons out of thoughts and regrets, without time, without exit. They see the same things again and again until they decide to let go. And here comes the question that takes your breath away. What if you are living now precisely because once you didn't let go? Cayce said, "There is no eternal hell. There is only eternal returning until you understand. Even the darkest soul hears the call when it is ready, and if the heart, even without a body, opens, the light calls it back." Sometimes souls ask to return themselves, not because they fear the light, but because they feel they have not yet done everything. They see those they hurt and choose to come again to make things right. Thus destiny is born. Thus lives intersect. You think it is a coincidence to meet someone in a cafe, but it is simply a promise made many centuries ago. In one American family, a 3-year-old boy suddenly began to speak. "My other mother lived by the sea. I died when I fell from a boat." He named the city, the street, the woman's name. When his parents checked, everything matched. The house, the name, even the date of the boy's death 40 years ago. And the mother, seeing the child's eyes, simply burst into tears. "It's him, my son." Coincidence, or memory of the soul? Cayce claimed, between incarnations the soul rests. Sometimes, for years, sometimes, for seconds. It watches those who remain, sometimes sending them signs, a scent, a song, a breeze through the window. And if a person notices, the connection stays, because love does not disappear. It simply changes form. When the soul passes the trial of the light and accepts itself, it rises higher. Cayce called this the level of the memory of the universe. There all knowledge is alive. It is not a library. It is an ocean made of understanding. Imagine a silence where everything can be heard, the cries of newborns, the tapping of rain on a window, words of love whispered many years ago. And suddenly you realize all of it is you. Every sound, every breath, every life. In this ocean, the soul remembers why it came to earth, not just to survive, to earn, to grow old, but to learn to love. And if it didn't succeed, life will give it another chance. Here the soul sees roads, lines of light. On each one there is its own story, its own pain, its own possibility. Some are easy but empty, others difficult but full of meaning. And the choice is hers. Sometimes the soul chooses suffering, not out of masochism but out of wisdom, because it knows pain cleanses faster than ease. Sometimes it chooses solitude to learn to hear itself. Sometimes poverty to understand what generosity is. Every life is a lesson written by itself, and there among the starry silence the soul meets those it has known. They come as flashes of light. You recognize them without words, those you loved and those you once betrayed. There is no judgment. There is only recognition. Here you are, again. They discuss the path. Who will become whom? Who will be the father? Who the friend? Who the enemy? Yes, even enemies are chosen in advance, because without them there is no growth. Cayce wrote, "Souls make agreements before birth. That is why nothing is accidental. Not a meeting on a train, not a handshake, not a betrayal. They are scenes of one great play, where all the actors are eternal. Sometimes, he said, a soul does not want to return. It is afraid to forget, afraid to lose those it loved, and then it is shown. Love is not memory. It goes with you, changing its form. Before returning, the soul approaches the gates of forgetting. Mist, light, silence. It leaves the past behind. Not all, only what hinders. But fragments remain, in intuition, in dreams, in déjà vu. One woman from Kentucky said she had feared water since childhood, and then she saw in a dream a sinking ship. Everything, down to the details, the shape of the wave, the smell of smoke. And after that the fear was gone, as if someone had said, "You have already been through this." Cayce said, "We carry within us the whisper of centuries. You do not remember, but you feel. Why does it suddenly hurt to look into a stranger's eyes? Why does a place you have never been feel familiar? Because the soul recognizes. That is the miracle. We think we are starting anew, but in fact, we are continuing. Every day, a new line in the eternal book, written by the soul itself. When fear leaves, the soul takes a step. Everything around dissolves. The ocean of light becomes breath, and somewhere on earth at that very moment a child is born. The world inhales, and a mother looking into her baby's eyes for the first time feels he knows. His gaze is mature, as if he has already seen life and chosen to return. Cayce claimed, "Children up to 3 years old remember. Sometimes they speak of former homes, old names, other mothers, but adults smile, saying imagination, and the memory fades. Thus a new life begins, and everything that once was knowledge turns into searching. We search for what we once already knew, love, light, ourselves. When the soul passes through the gates, when a new life is born, not all leave at once. Part of them remains, not as a body, but as a presence." Cayce wrote, "Love is too strong to disappear." He claimed that after death, a part of consciousness stays close to those it loved, not as a ghost, not as a dream, but as a breath between worlds. Sometimes you can feel it. At night it suddenly becomes quiet, as if someone entered the room. The curtains move, though there is no wind. You catch the scent of a perfume that hasn't existed for a long time. It is not a coincidence. It is a sign. Once in a hospice, a nurse told how a woman had died, and the next night the night lamp in her room turned on. No one touched it. It burned all night. "She didn't want it to be dark here," the nurse said with a smile. Cayce explained, "These souls cannot interfere with the fate of the living, but they can guide, gently, almost imperceptibly. Sometimes through a dream. Sometimes through music that plays at just the right moment. Sometimes through a coincidence that saves a life. A man from Arizona told how once he overslept his flight. He was angry, cursing, and an hour later the news showed the plane had crashed. He could not understand why he hadn't heard the alarm. And then he remembered, in a dream he saw his mother who had died a year earlier. She simply said, 'Wait, coincidence or care?' Cayce said, 'There are no coincidences. There is love searching for a way. And the more open the heart, the easier it is to hear it. But there is another side. Not every soul is ready to leave. Some get stuck between worlds, because of regret, because of guilt.' Cayce called it the chain of emotions. Such souls wander, not because they are not allowed to leave, but because they themselves do not let go. They return to homes, photographs, places where they were once happy. Sometimes people feel a sudden chill, a rustle, a shadow in the mirror. It is not evil. It is longing. They are searching for those who can help them release. Cayce said, "When you feel a sudden cold, don't be afraid. Sometimes it's just a greeting from home." He described how souls come in dreams, not as images, but as real beings. They do not speak loudly. Sometimes they simply look and peace fills your heart. That's how they say goodbye. That's how they teach us not to fear. But there is also darkness. souls that cannot forgive. Those who leave with hatred do not find the light. They become heavy shadows, losing their color. But even they are awaited by someone. Sometimes guides come, those they once hurt, or those who loved them despite everything, and whisper, "It's time to go home." Cayce said that when such a soul finally forgives, a miracle is born in our world. Someone suddenly recovers, someone avoids disaster, simply because somewhere above, someone has let go of their pain. Sometimes souls return not into bodies but into inspiration. They become music, paintings, poems. He said, if suddenly a talent appears that you never had, perhaps it is the memory of a soul whispering through you. And when you look at an old photograph and feel that someone is near, don't turn away. Say, "I feel you." For the soul, that is the light by which it ascends. Cayce believed, between the living and the dead, there is no wall. There is only a difference in frequency. And if the heart vibrates in unison, you will hear them, not with your ears, with your soul. And perhaps that is why the loneliest people sometimes feel, that someone quietly holds their shoulder when they cry in the dark. It is not imagination. It is love that has not disappeared. Cayce said, when a person understands that there is no death, he finally begins to live. He saw how fear makes us slaves to the end, and how faith makes the beginning infinite. Once he was asked, "What did you see there beyond the edge?" He answered simply, "Love." Not the kind that says, "I am yours," but the kind that says, "I am everything." When the soul approaches the final boundary, those it loved come to meet it. Sometimes, not as faces, but as light. Sometimes, just as a feeling of warmth. They wait without words, without questions, because everything has already been said, and then peace comes. So deep that time ceases to exist. You feel the breath of God inside yourself, not above, not outside, inside, as if everything you were searching for was always there. Cayce told that those who returned from clinical death felt the same thing, an immense, unconditional love, not a blinding light, but a gentle radiance, in which it is impossible to feel fear. He called it the source, the home of all souls, the place from which we come and to which we return, not as punishment, not as reward, but as to ourselves. When the soul reaches this light, all separations disappear. There is no longer I and they. There is only we, an ocean of consciousness where each drop remembers its own name, yet still remains part of the whole. And perhaps that is what heaven truly is. Not a place, but an understanding that you were never alone. Cayce said, even darkness is light that has not yet realized what it is. And if we could see how much light is born from pain, we would stop cursing suffering. We would give thanks for how it taught us to feel. He wrote that every soul moves at its own rhythm. For some, one life is enough. For others, thousands. But in the end, all return. No one is lost, no one is forgotten. Perhaps that is why we are drawn to the stars, because there is our home. There lies the memory that cannot be erased. Sometimes, he said, at the moment of death, a person sees a hand of light extended toward them. It does not call. It waits for a decision. If the soul is ready, it goes. If not, it returns. Because God does not force. He waits. He always waits. While we are alive, we are at the exam. After, we see the results. But there are no grades here. There is only experience. Every step, every fall, every act of forgiveness is simply a lesson in love. And perhaps that is the meaning of everything, not in how much you have done, but in how much you have managed to love. Cayce said, you are eternal. Your body dies, but you do not. When you close your eyes, you simply awaken. And if people remembered this, the world would be different. We would argue less, be angry less, forgive more often, because we would understand everything you give returns. The greatest miracle is to realize that life does not end. When the body grows still, the soul smiles, because it knows ahead is the light. Sometimes a gentle smile remains on the faces of the dead. It is not sleep, it is recognition. They remembered who they were, why they were here, where they are returning. Death is not a period, it is a comma, the next line of the book written in light. And if you are listening to these words now, know, your soul remembers too. It remembers how it flew. It remembers that light which was home. And one day, it will return there. But while you are here, live. Do not be afraid. Do not postpone love. Forgive. Embrace. Look into eyes. Say what your heart is afraid to say. Because when 7 days have passed after your last breath, you will understand the only thing that mattered was how you loved.